So, good morning, everyone, and welcome to the first talk of the day. It is 9 a.m. in the morning. I know it's a bit too early. Sorry for that, but it's the way it is. And I hope you all had time to grab a coffee. To wake you up and wake us up, I would like to start with two very innocent questions. First one is, who has ever heard about experimentation or A/B testing? Raise your hands. Yeah, a lot of hands. Ekrem. Okay, and second question is, who has actually worked with experimentation in a real-life project? Not so many. Okay, good. As you may have seen, experimentation is a topic that most of us, if not all, is aware of, but just few of us have the chance to work on it. And we want to change that. Today, we are going to talk about the importance of experimentation, and we will show how easy it is to create new experiments using edge delivery services. My name is Francisco Chicharro Sanz, and today I'm presenting with my dear teammate, Ekrem Dogan. We are both senior software engineers working at Adobe in Switzerland. And without further delay, let's start talking about experimentation. And as I love history, I would like to start from the very beginning. Well, James Lind was a Scottish surgeon working for the British Navy in the 18th century. He is famous because he is the first person who documented a controlled experiment. And this experiment was for the treatment of scurvy. In centuries from 16 to 18, scurvy was a terrible disease for sailors. The British Navy said that 50% of the sailors were dying because of the scurvy in long trips. This was worse than any other enemy for them. And James Lind decided that he wanted to do something about it. So what he did is he collected different potential treatments for scurvy, and then he jumped onto a ship. He waited until 12 sailors were sick. Then he split them in 6 different groups. And to each of these groups, he gave a different treatment. One of the groups had to drink seawater. It was a bit disgusting, I guess. Another group had to drink vinegar, which was even worse. But there was a group, the lucky ones, who had to eat oranges and lemons. After 1 week of treatment, the ones who were eating oranges and lemons were completely recovered. As a result of this experiment, an admiral from the British Navy issued an order to distribute lemon juice and lime juice to all sailors. If we continue our trip in the history and fast forward 250 years, we have another very interesting story. Greg Linden was a software engineer working for Amazon in 1998. 1998 was a very important year for Amazon because it's when they realized that selling more than books online could be very profitable. And Greg had a great idea. He thought, well, if when someone adds a product to the cart, let's say product A, I can implement a component that says, people that bought product A also bought product B, C, and D. So he implemented this, and then he presented it to his managers. There was a marketing senior vice president who said, Greg, stop it. We are not doing this. Why? Well, we want, but when someone adds a product to the cart, he goes to the checkout immediately, as soon as possible. If we add these recommendations, they would start clicking around. We want to avoid distractions. Well, Greg was disappointed, but he didn't give up. And what he did was to run an A/B test. Small percentage of visitors coming to Amazon were getting his recommendations component. The results of the experiment were clear. Not only the recommendations won, but it also demonstrated that Amazon was losing $1 to $2 million a week for not having this feature. And this was back in 1998, when Amazon was not doing as much money as they are doing now. Nowadays, Amazon considers that shopping cart-based recommendations represent 35% of the revenue that they get from the website. And what is the main learning we can get here? Last time I asked this question, someone said, well, the main learning is that marketing managers are always wrong. Well, this is not my opinion. For me, the main conclusion here is that opinions are nice, but data is better. Or, as the former CEO of Netscape said, if we have data, then let's look at the data. But if all that we have are just opinion, then let's go with mine.
Yes, excellent.
Experimentation today is a critical technique for optimizing websites. Companies like Amazon, Adobe, Microsoft, Booking, etc., they run around 10,000 experiments a year. This means that when you go to the websites of one of these companies, there are approximately 500 concurrent experiments running. That's really a lot. Experimentation is key because it helps these companies to optimize the websites by minimizing the risk. These companies can improve the website, taking decisions based on evidence rather than opinions or assumptions. Of course, experimentation has some challenges. The first challenge that we want to point out is context relevance. It's important to know the context, to understand the context, and by understanding the context, we mean knowing what our users are doing on the website. Where are they coming from? How is my website performing? Is the content engaging? Is the UX appealing? All of these and more questions are key to understand the context. If we don't understand the context, we are in the risk of running experiments which are completely useless. Second challenge is privacy. We are in an environment of growing data regulations. We all know about GDPR in Europe. We all know about CCPA in California, HIPAA for the whole US, and there are more and more regulations coming. These regulations make that most of the websites today have a consent banner. Experimentation cannot depend on a consent banner. Experimentation should be able to run and to track results without a consent banner. Of course, you can still have a consent banner on your website for other features. But your experimentation should not wait until the consent banner is displayed to run. It has to happen before. Otherwise, it is too late. Last challenge is performance. We cannot afford to drop the performance of the page because we are running an experiment on it. If the page takes longer to load, or the content is shifting around because of the experiment running, then the user experience is worse. And when user experience is worse, the bounce rate increases immediately. If our core web vitals are affected, the SEO ranking will be eventually affected as well. But don't worry, because we have the solution. The solution is called contextual experimentation. And it is an AEM S-Delivery Services plugin, which is easy to set up, even easier to use. It is privacy first, it's performance first, and boosts experimentation velocity. And how does it approach the challenges that we mentioned before? Well, if you remember, first challenge was about the context. What's the behavior of the visitors? Should I optimize content or UX? All these questions that you see on the screen can be answered with data. And in Edge Delivery Services, we have the perfect data source. It's called RAM. RAM stands for Real Use Monitoring, and it's a core feature of Edge Delivery Services which tracks information about the performance of the website and how users are interacting with it. Second challenge was privacy. Contextual experimentation is consent-free because it does not store any cookie, it does not store any persistent data in the local storage, it does not track any personally identifiable information. It does track data, of course, but it tracks it via real use monitoring, via RAM. And RAM guarantees that the data is tracked in a way that is compliant with the regulation and that does not require consent. Last challenge was performance. Contextual experimentation is a lightweight, self-contained, and optimized piece of JavaScript that plugs into the load-trigger phase of the page rendering. And it does not make any external requests to other domains, avoiding extra SSL handshakes, which are known to cause delays. If you are familiar with the AEM Edge Delivery Services boilerplate, you are probably familiar with this graph. So this is the page rendering flow. The entry point to our code is head.html. Head.html invokes scripts.js. Scripts.js has a function called load_page. And load_page has three phases. Load trigger, which is intended to render the most critical content of the page, which is the LCP. Then we have load lazy. Load lazy renders the rest of the page. And finally, we have the load delayed. Load delayed runs few seconds after the other ones, and normally we use it to include external script, which could be heavy. So experimentation is plugged into the load eager phase. And what is the plugin doing? First, it checks if there is an active experiment running on the page. Second, it checks if the audience matches with the current visitor. And if it does, then it runs the decisioning logic to know which variation we have to show to the current visitor. Then it grabs the content of that variation by fetching it, and eventually it replaces the content of the current page by the variation. And it does all of this in a matter of milliseconds. Then it returns the flow back to the load eager, which continues rendering the markup modified. I told you at the beginning that it is very easy to set up experimentation plugin, and for that I would like to ask Ekrem to show us how to do it.
All right. So in general, it takes me a minute to set up the experimentation plugin, but I realized that when I'm doing that, it takes me about 2. So to set up the experimentation engine, I will go to the home of the experimentation plugin, which is in GitHub. This is everything, all I need to create the first experimentation. First, let me explain the scenario. I have the snapshot of a weekend page based on edge delivery. I will set up the experimentation plugin on top of this. So the first step is to get the entire content of the experimentation plugin under plugins folder in my website using the git subtree command, which I will run here very conveniently. And then the plugin content goes under the plugins folder here. And then there is a few manual steps that I need to complete. The first one is to copy paste this definitions. One is defining the audiences, and the second one is a utility function called getAllMetadata, which I will add the top of the scripts.js file. And then the next part is copying the plugin context. This is to pass the required functions to the experimentation plugin, which will be used later on. And then I will add these imports to my AMJS imports, right? And then this is the cool part. In the load eager function, we get the metadata from the page, and if there is an active experiment running, the experimentation plugin rolls the dice and it determines which variant to load the content for. So I will just put this part in the very beginning of the load eager, right? And then finally, there is this small utility, what we call experimentation pill. This is only for the preview environment and not required for anything else. So I will put it at the end of load lazy. And this is pretty much it. After I'm done, I can just push my changes to the remote, and that's it.
Okay, so at this point, I guess you all want to know how to create new experiments, but before doing that, I would like to explain a couple of things. We are working with experimentation since 1.5 years in a co-innovation mode. This means that we reach out to our customers that are using edge delivery services, and we ask them if they are interested in optimizing the website using experimentation with us. For the ones that say yes, what we do is we look at their data and try to find experimentation opportunities. When we find something that is not working as it should or as it could, then we go back to the customer and say, hey, we found this, let's define an experiment, and together with them, the partner and the design agency, we create experiments, and we run them. What we are going to demo today are 2 real-life scenarios that we worked on during last year. We are anonymizing them, so we are not using the website of the customer for privacy reasons, right? But the use cases are real. And with this, Ekrem, do you want to start with the first one?
Sure. So I will start with the first scenario. This is what we call content experiment. It's pretty straightforward. Content experiment is something that the only variable between variance is the content. So we run this type of experiments to measure if the different content conveys the message better for the websites, or if the different content has different engagement rates or something. So let me walk you through the scenario. One of the customers we had really high organic traffic. So the good thing about the organic traffic is that people are actually coming to your website with some intent on their mind. They actually searched something on the search engine, and then they come to your website. So you would expect very high conversion rates, very high engagement rate from that specific portion of your users. But in their case, the click-through rate was extremely low. So we digged into that and we created a hypothesis. The hypothesis was that their content was not optimized for the organic traffic, people coming from organic traffic. So how do we validate the hypothesis? We created a variant which has content that is optimized for organic traffic. To do that, we look at the Google Search Console. We get the keywords with the highest search volume, and then we crafted the content around those keywords, and then we created the variant. And then we ran the original content 50-50 split with the content optimized for organic traffic. And then in the end, we decided if the hypothesis is valid or not. So I will replicate the scenario based on the weekend. So this is the content weekend has. If you come to weekend site, you will see weekend adventures title and reserve your new adventure on CTA blog. After going back and forth with the investigation with the SEO team, we created the challenger, let's say, for the demo purposes, which has different content. Instead of having the weekend adventures and reserve your new adventure, it has content optimized for the organic, for the users coming from, let's say, Google. It has the adventures, outdoor trips, it has more actionable CTA and everything. So how can I run this completely different URL along with the original content? So this is, since I set up the experimentation plugin in the previous step, I just go to the content of the original document, right? I go to the page metadata. I add 2 rows. One row is the experiment and the name, and the second row is the experiment variants. And I put the link of the challenger document there, right? And when I preview this, I see the experimentation pill on the bottom right corner. This is what I mentioned before. So here, I can play with the control and challengers. And then when I simulate the control, I see the content of the control. And when I simulate the challenger, I see content of the challenger. This is what I see on the preview environment. But if your user goes to this page on production, they don't see the experimentation pill, and they get the variant based on the splits or the logic you provided. And when I finish the experiment, it's pretty straightforward to promote the winning challenger, winning variant to the production. All I need to do is to copy paste the original document in place of the index doc and then publish it. This is pretty much how we run content experiments.
Can you go back to the presentation? Okay. The second scenario that we want to talk about is about a customer who was running a marketing campaign on social media to acquire traffic. When we look at the data of this customer, we realize that they were spending a lot of money to acquire traffic from a given social network that when they were arriving to the website through this campaign, they were immediately leaving. They were bouncing. Ekrem, is there a way to create an experiment for a given segment of users?
Yes, the next scenario is what we call UX experiment. So in this scenario, we are replicating another use case where the traffic is coming from paid marketing campaigns, and then we're going to optimize against that one. So imagine the scenario where the company is running affiliate campaigns on a social media like TikTok, and you would expect that if you are paying a lot of money for your marketing campaigns, then the people coming from your social media campaigns to convert or at least use your website in an engaging manner. So the context here is that there are people coming from inorganic traffic, they're not engaging with your website and they're immediately bouncing off. You can create a hypothesis along with the lines of maybe the demographic coming from your website from that specific social media like TikTok has different type of user experience familiarity than your current layout, right? And to test the hypothesis, we can create another experiment with the same content, different variants, but the same content, but different user experience. And in this scenario, I will also run this experiment only for that specific target, on that to targeting that specific portion of the users. To do that, I will first I need to define my audience. For the demo, I will create a new audience called TikTok here. And I will define my audience as the mobile TikTok users, which means if they have narrow viewport and they have some UTM source parameters in the URL, which is conveniently copy pasted from here, right? So this is my audience defined. And when I do this, let me quickly push this first. And when I do this, I will be able to use the TikTok audience from my document. To run the code experiment, I will just remove the content here, and I will tell the experimentation plugin, hey, just give me one variant. And then on top of that, I will specify my audience, the one I created, as TikTok. Right. This is all it takes. Now the magic behind is that when I ask the experimentation plugin to create me a variant, it not only routes the traffic, but it also puts some hints on the DOM to identify which variant I'm working with. So if I zoom in to the body class, I will see that the experimentation plugin added the name of the experiment and the variant. So using those CSS classes, I can conveniently address the specific portion of the users or the experiment, and I can create some style based on that one. So I prepared my style, and I will, to create another UX for people coming from TikTok, I will do a simple magic. And when I push this, like setup, code, experiment. When I push this, the experimentation is pretty much set up. And let's see the difference. So if I go to mobile view, I can show it better. So in the challenger, we changed the in the control, let's say we'll start with the control. In the control, we had the horizontal scroll, right? This is the status quo. And we wanted to target specifically for the TikTok audience. So we created a challenger for them, which kind of matches with their user experience coming from scrollable world, right? We put the cards on top of each other so that they can scroll down, and the look and feel kind of matches with the TikTok. And to validate the hypothesis, if actually we can address the user experience needs or desires of the people coming from this specific social media campaign, we will run the experiment for a while, and the data will tell us if this was a successful experiment or not. And this is how we set up the code experiments.
Thank you very much, Ekrem. So let's start wrapping up the session with a call to action. First, adopt contextual experiments by leveraging the plugin. Please download the plugin, install it in your projects, and play around with it. Second, co-innovate with us. Reach out to your customers, tell them about this feature, and that they can work together with you, the partners, and Adobe to improve and optimize the website using experimentation. Remember that data always wins over opinions. And can you imagine that you want to run an experiment with 20 variations of your homepage because you don't know which content is going to work better? If this is the case, don't miss the talk tomorrow. My colleagues Vitaly and Sinem are going to present a very nice session, and among other things, they are going to talk about a project called Generate Variations using GenAI. Some final words. I love this quote. Experimentation isn't just about running tests. It's about running the right test for the right users and the right time. And the author of this quote is my dear colleague, Ekrem Dogan. Applause for him. Okay, as we still have a couple of minutes to finish, I would like to wrap up to finish with by closing the circle. I'm sure you remember our dear colleague, James Lind, our dear friend. So do you know what happened to him when he came back from his trip? He went to his laboratory and he thought, okay, what can I do to improve further the treatment? And then he started thinking and came with the idea that, okay, if I boil the lemon juice, then we can keep it for longer and we can concentrate it. So it will last longer, which is very important when you are in a long trip on a boat, and it will also take less space, which is also important. But he was missing a couple of points, right? First one, he didn't fully understand the results of the experiments. As you know, scurvy is a condition caused by the lack of vitamin C. But at this time, vitamin C was not yet discovered. Second point that he was missing is that he was trying to over-optimize the solution without running further tests. And third thing that he was doing wrong was that he was missing the context. He was not anymore on the boat with the sailors that were sick. He was alone on his laboratory. So, as you know, when you boil lemon juice, the vitamin C is gone. So the treatment was useless. He was giving the treatment to sailors, but they were still dying, and he was really frustrated. It passed another 40, 50 years until someone realized that the treatment was good, but you cannot boil the lemon juice. So don't do like James Lind did. Try to understand always the results of your experiments. Don't over-optimize without running further tests. And never miss the context. Thank you very much, guys.
Thank you, guys. That was a great presentation. And I think you convinced the crowd, because most voted question is, what's the license behind it? Can I just include it to my page?
Yes, you can. At the moment, as I said, we are working in co-innovation mode. So you will need our help or to work together with us to find experimentation opportunities. But apart from that, you can already download the plugin and install it and play with it.
There's this other multi-variant testing tool called Adobe Target. Probably you know it. The one still offers a bit more than just the experimentation plugin in EDS. Is there a way to get like best of both worlds, like the power of Target and the performance of experimentation plugin?
Okay, so to start with, Target is a different product, right? It's not the CMS, a feature of the CMS. It's a different product with its own license. And in Adobe Target, you can do many things. It's not just running an A/B test. You can do personalization, you can do targeting, you can do plenty of things. So it's much more complete. But if you want to have both together, at the moment it's not possible, but we are working on it. I don't know when, but we are working together with the Target team to get an optimized version of the JavaScript running in the front end, so that you could leverage the Target UI to create experiments and so on, and eventually you will get a faster experience on the front end. But this is still ongoing.
For all the ones not on Edge Delivery Services yet, does it work on AEM backend as well?
You want to date as well?
Well, not now, but you might want to wait for the next Adobe Summit. Something might be introduced there.
Okay, then we wait for Summit announcement. It was great to have you on stage. Big applause for Francisco and Ekrem.